All right,
But yeah, so thank you, Rhiane, for like coming and doing a Zoom with me. And I didn't even know you was like based up in, is it Manchester?
Yeah,
Yeah, I've actually support Manchester United football.
good. So do I.
Yeah, woo! So yeah, so I know I sent you a bit of a brief about what it's going to be about, but we can kind of get into it. And
Yeah,
basically,
can you go over your brief again, please? I've not read it properly. Sorry.
so basically, it's just I'm doing an online series, trying to engage like inner city young people and people into the outdoors. So this is like my quest of what the project is about. Is my quest of getting people involved in it. So I'm talking to like my family and friends, but I'm also talking to professionals and people in the community that are and people that have their own things set up. For instance, like Black Girls Hike, and like just knowing more about what you do and gathering some like tips or stuff like that. So that's kind of just the brief of it, and that's what
Okay.
it's more of a chat than an interview. I don't really like saying interview. It's
Cool,
more
cool,
like a
cool.
chat. It's not really like formal and like, oh, I want to hear the best answers. It's just natural. So
Right.
does that help?
Yeah, that helps.
All right, so we can get into it. So I just it would be great to know a bit about your organization and what types of outdoors activities you offer.
So at Black Girls Hike, we do nationwide group hikes, and we've started doing some like introductory to other outdoor activities. So far we've done some gorge walking, we've done some caving, and we've done some climbing, and we've got some introductory sessions coming up because we're trying to kind of like support people into like getting qualifications in these things. So we're doing something in climbing soon, and we're doing paddle sports, and we're doing mountain biking as well. And we're also running training courses at the moment as well for our leaders, because we need new leaders and we need them to be trained. So yeah, that's what we're doing at the moment as well. But I would say our main service is like the hikes that we do.
Okay, that's a lot of things though, considering like, rah, that's bare things. Even I saw that you said about the cave exploring. Like, how's that? Like, people's reactions to like doing that, Black girls as well. Like,
Well, that's the thing, because most people think like they're going to get stuck or something, and a lot of people are like a bit wary of like confined spaces and stuff. But the caving instructor that we've got, she's like really phenomenal. She's like a proper badass. I heard her speak once at a festival. I remember saying to my friend, she's really cool, this person. You have to make sure that the group meets her. So she takes you to places that you're really comfortable. And yeah, the caving's been really, really good. We've done it in Yorkshire Dales. So yeah, I'm hoping that we'll be able to get more people into caving and potholing. I mean, to be honest, the potholing, there were parts of it that I didn't enjoy, and I was just like, oh my god, someone beam me up out of this cave. But as the leader, I feel like I'm kind of like peer pressured. I've got to do everything.
so what does that? What is that? What is that? Pot.
So potholing is like abseiling in caves. So you kind of like, you go down on an abseil and then you've got to climb back up. And even though you think, oh, it's just easy, it's just climbing a ladder, it is not easy. I feel like you only had upper body strength when you was a child, but try and do anything like the monkey bars now, and honestly, you'll be in so much pain. Oh, it was difficult, but it was good.
Yeah, it's nice to hear these experiences as well. I'm trying to get involved as well. I want to do more of this stuff. And you said that you got like loads of different regions as well. So
Yeah.
how did you like first start it? Was it just you and a group of girls, or how did it kind of?
So it was just me. So basically, I was on a train going through the Peak District, and I was just watching people get on and off, and it was just like a typical old white people. I call them the beige pants brigade. It was just like old people. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to take up hiking. But I'd always kind of done stuff in the community. I'd always been involved in like loads of Pan-African groups and like community groups. And I've worked with like the emerging community in my town for a few years. So I was like, it was only natural that it would be called Black Girls Hike, because I'm only about safe spaces. But people always say, well, why is it only black girls? I'm like, because that's mainly what I do anyway. So that was like the idea behind it. So then we was running for a couple of months in Manchester, and then we started getting people coming up from like the Midlands. So I don't know if you know Sherelle, who runs Steppers.
Yeah, I
So
do.
then Sherelle came to one of our walks, and I was like, oh, she's really cool. And then I was like, oh, could you start leading some walks in the Midlands for us? So then we expanded to the Midlands, and then we got Oge in London. That's actually a year today, actually, that we did our first London walk. And then now we've got people in the northeast, East Anglia, the southeast, the southwest. We've got groups in like Devon, Weymouth, Bristol, just like also all over. And our Facebook group is really, really active. At the moment, we've got like 6,000 people in our Facebook group, and we've just had to break it all down into separate regional groups. So we've got like a Scotland group and a Greater London group. So yeah, it's just it's growing faster than like I can kind of keep up with it.
So what's some of the like challenges you'd say, like, and the perceptions on like Black girls and them going out in nature and stuff like that?
What would I say the challenges are? I'd say it's definitely that. It's the perceptions. It's kind of like that historic perception that you have of what the outdoors is about. So like most Black people grow up in like inner city environments, don't they? And it just tends to be the thing. And you don't have that much exposure to the outdoors. And it's also, it's not just a race thing, it's a class thing as well, because it's all about the resources. So like certain schools have like Duke of Edinburgh, they're doing like weekenders, conservation weekenders. Certain schools do absolutely nothing. Some schools don't even like go on trips or anything. So I think it's that. And then it's also the fact that then you've not got the skills to actually access the outdoors. You don't really know what you're doing. It's also proximity to nature. How far do you live from decent green places? And I was saying recently that I think that people forget that like when our parents and their generation was coming over, they weren't coming over to be jollying around the British countryside. They were coming over to graft, and they were getting the most hostility in the cities. So why would they then think that, oh, actually, let me just go to the countryside? Have you seen that thing that the National Trust have been doing about the colonial countryside? And basically, I mean, who owns the countryside?
It's not our typical people from our community kind of thing.
It's not our typical people from our community, unfortunately.
And that's I suppose that's also what it's about as well. Being able, like me, even seeing like someone like you, like it's really inspirational, because I can see myself in that kind of, I have someone to look up to that's actually doing something I believe in. And sometimes it's that as well, being able to see someone that looks like you and kind of has the same kind of belief systems and stuff that you can then resonate with you, and it kind of brings that motivation and that kind of drive to also do it.
That is so true, because representation is so important. And I always say that, like, so when I was in school, I was into like cross country, and I used to absolutely love Kelly Holmes. And like Kelly Holmes, obviously she's always around, but she was that representation. Do you know what I mean? Like she was a runner, I was a runner, she looked like me, I felt like I could do it. And I love her.
I've read her book as well, actually. So it's like I completely agree with that. I was wondering as well. You see, like even me, like for instance, and you, as I can see as well, you got some nice braids as well. Like even stuff like hair and stuff. Some girls wear their afro and stuff like that. And like nails being did and stuff like that. So when it's like the weather and the mud and stuff like that, and the enjoyment, like do you see like a different side to like Black girls, like us Black girls and stuff, or are they still like, oh, my hair, like, no, actually my nails, like, because I get my nails and my hair did and stuff like that. But is that like something that is a thing, or it's not a thing at all? It's just like
it's not really a thing at all. Like I've had like one or two people message me and be like, oh my goodness, what would I do with my hair? And I'm like, really? Is this really the question that you're asking about your hair? Like honestly, just roll in a head wrap. Loads of people do it. People just turn up in headscarves, because also as well, I think that like the whole idea of getting your hair done and your nails did, it's because you kind of like want to look presentable, isn't it? And generally that's to kind of like not just, it's like the opposite sex that people are kind of looking presentable for.
Yeah.
But you don't need to worry about that in the countryside, because they're not there. Do you know what I mean? So don't need to look good for anything.
Yeah, I agree with that. That you see a recruitment process of like people as well. Is it like certain age groups or like abilities to join in the activities, or everyone's welcome?
So we try and have it as 18 plus. You do get some people that will kind of like bring the children every now and again, but then I kind of see it as some people want a break from the kids, and that's why we have it as 18 plus. So what we'd like to do moving forwards is, once we have more leaders, then some walks can be so that people can bring the children, because I understand that there's a lot of like single mums and people that I don't want them to feel like isolated or excluded. That's just kind of my personal preference at the moment for no kids. But then at the moment we've just hired a business development manager who's trying to kind of like get the foundations of the organization in place now, a non-profit, because we do want to start working with under 18s. And we've had like quite a few people reach out to us to start doing programs. So that is definitely something that I would like to do, like something a bit like Duke of Edinburgh, but not Duke of Edinburgh, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I think that would be a good thing as well, like just getting out to hike and do other activities, because as you said as well, it's not really accessible for a lot of people, like getting those opportunities and the space with like Black girls, or being in that environment. You feel safe naturally because you're around like people, as we've been saying, that are like you, kind of thing. So you see, like with buying stuff and stuff like that, like what kind of equipment and stuff would you say like people would generally need, or say like there's a beginner that has never done it? Do you guys like say like what kind of tips to wear for clothing, or someone that doesn't know nothing about like the outdoors or hiking? Do you guys offer that kind of?
So what we do is we basically say that, so when we send out our walk confirmation, we'll basically say like, this is the stuff that you need, and then we give everyone a discount code for Berghaus because we're ambassadors for them. But we literally basically say like, we can't like tell you exactly what shoes to get, for example, because everybody's got different budgets. So like my first hiking stuff was like from Sports Direct, and it was just Carrymore. And now obviously people send me stuff for free, and I'm like, ooh, and then you don't really realize the actual cost of things. So like people have been to me before like, oh, I really like that jacket, and I'm like, oh, here's the link for it, and they're like, that's like super expensive. So when people come into the inbox, I literally just say, yeah, I know that we are Berghaus ambassadors, but honestly, just go to Decathlon and Sports Direct and you can get everything you need from there. Because I think as well, that's like one of the other barriers that people have. Like, you know, when you want to start something new, you're thinking about all the things you need. I don't know if you were like a list person like me, but I'm like, oh, I need this, 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 and this. And I think people kind of like find that a bit overwhelming. So I always just say, get some walking boots and a waterproof jacket, and they're the basics, and everything else you can just build it up from there.
That makes a lot of sense. Me too, because my first stuff was definitely from Decathlon. Decathlon and Sports Direct. Those are my go-to places as well. I didn't even know much about brands and Trespass and all these other kind of outdoorsy brands. I saw on social media, in fact, that you guys went to kind of see wanted to see a media shower kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
And I was wondering, I wanted to hear about that experience.
Yeah, so me and one of my friends that I met I met this girl on Instagram through a meetup, and like she lives near me. She's like my lockdown lifesaver. I spent loads of time with her. So there's this thing called the Persides meteor shower, and I think it was in August last year. So we went to camp so that we could watch it. Honestly, I saw this shooting star and it was amazing. It was like the shooting stars that you get in the cartoon where it's got that big tail on it. Yeah. And then after that, I felt like I couldn't look anywhere else because I didn't want to miss anything. I was like this for hours. But honestly, it was amazing because I only saw my first shooting star last year when I did an event in Devon. So now I've seen like 2 of them. But that was really nice because I think that, like, because I'm quite new to the outdoors, so I've just kind of like got into hiking. And then I think the more you kind of get interested in the outdoors, you see how much what else it's got to offer, do you know what I mean? So suddenly I'm like camping out watching meteor showers. Like if you'd have said that to me like a few years ago, I would have been like, Rhiane who?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I was actually going to ask, like, did you prepare for this, or was it just like a thing where you kind of went ahead with it? Because I find that as well, since I started getting into outdoors, I just started doing things that I wouldn't normally do, like foraging and stuff like that. I was like, me thinking like I can eat stuff off the road. That's not really like something that naturally came to me. But like you're saying, because of my engagement, I now have this interest in like, wow, like I want to know what this is about. Like I'm also always looking up now to see like what's going on around me. I'm not looking down at my phone as much anymore. I'm like engaging with things because it's also about like the little things as well that wasn't really noticing.
It is all the little things. So like in lockdown, we did some events with the Wildlife Trust called Nature on Your Doorstep. So it was just kind of like online events to keep people engaged, but it was all about like the little things that you can spot on your doorstep. Because I think when people talk about nature, they think that nature's all like going really far to somewhere green, but it's literally, as soon as you step outside your door, you're in nature. Do you know what I mean? So it's about just kind of like noticing the little things that are around you as well. And then also, I think it's a good way for people with, like the people, our members that had children as well, it's a good way for them to get the children engaged.
Definitely, it's like a little fun thing to do, because I wouldn't have. My mom didn't even take me in places like that. So this is like also helping to instill stuff like to younger generations coming up as well, because it becomes normalized. Like,
yeah.
Like
So we got nominated for some like National Diversity Award, and I can like read through all the nominations. So I was reading through them, and one woman said something like, "I've created a new kind of like something new for the generation of my family." She said basically like, my mum never took me out into the countryside, but now it's something that I can start doing with my daughter, and it's like a positive pastime that we can like carry on as a family now. And I was like, oh, I'm really touched by that.
It's so true though. Could you tell me like one of your most memorable kind of experiences of like being in the outdoors and stuff, like one that is like when you was maybe younger, if you was into outdoors then as much, or one or most recent kind of memory?
A memorable experience of being in the outdoors. I've had a few recently because I'm like doing like loads of new stuff at the moment. So I think that's quite difficult. A memorable experience. So I did once get the group lost on a hike in like really, really terrible conditions, really poor visibility. It was like really windy. One girl fell over and kind of like had a little mini panic attack. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness. And like, that was like when I was really new to the group. So I'd only like ran like 3 walks, and I kind of set the group up on the vibe of, oh, well, people just come along and we're all like friends. So like someone had said, oh, I've been to this place before. So I was like, well, I've not been, but she's been. So she'll kind of know where we're going. She didn't know where we was going. And obviously then I realized that actually I'm the leader. So since then, I've been on like a few courses. And the more and more I go on courses, the more I realize how actually dangerous that situation was when I was out there. And I feel like it just shows that I was kind of underestimated being in the outdoors, and I was like really ignorant to like the dangers of it, and how it can, it can just really, things can really change. So I'd say that's one of my most memorable experiences, because I think about it all the time now, and I just think I'm glad people still came back to the group.
So there must be like loads of like physical and mental challenges, as you're saying. So like,
yeah, it's very mentally challenging. I think that there's loads of different things about it that's mentally challenging, but the main one is just kind of like being the leader of this platform when I never set it up to be like this kind of platform. So it would have been a meetup if meetup was free, but meetup's like $7.99 a month, so it had to go on Instagram. So that's why it kind of like grew like this. But then I think that just kind of like realizing that I'm the leader and I've got this responsibility, and like people, I feel like you're just under a little bit more pressure. And yeah, that's something that I'm finding. And so that's all kind of like, it's all like a learning experience. Like every day is like a school day with this group, every single day.
Would you say like the weather?
Summer holidays.
Would you say like the weather has a big impact on what kind of activities you'd do? Or
yeah, I think the weather definitely has an impact on, I think the majority of people that come to our group are fair weather hikers, because we are all black and we like the heat. So like people will message me and be like, it says it's going to rain on Friday, but on Saturday we're still going to be walking. And I'm like, yeah, get a waterproof. Like, because I think that you just have to adapt to make the best of a bad situation. Like we live in the UK and that's what it is. It is cold for like 6 months of the year, but it doesn't mean that we can't be active for 6 months of the year. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you just got to kind of like make the best of a bad situation.
Definitely. So how can like young people from inner cities discover more ways of like catching nature on their doorstep, like you spoke about before?
I think it's just taking notice of the things that are in your local area. So kind of like, like accessing your local green spaces, maybe getting involved in them, in like the conservation and the upkeep of them. What else could they do? Loads of community groups that you can join that will kind of like help you get further afield. To be honest, now you've asked me that, I'm actually thinking there's not much they could be doing, because it's not there. The resources are not really there, are they, for them to kind of like get that involved, I would say. I feel like there are a lot of initiatives that kind of develop, but they're not very there's no longevity in them. Do you know what I mean?
Could you explain a bit more what conservation is? Because maybe not everyone might know what that actually is.
So conservation is kind of like protecting and preserving the environment that's around us for generations to come.
Okay,
So
thank you.
things like, I feel like that was a really good descriptive line. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's basically what conservation is. So it's kind of like, I don't know, just kind of like looking after the green spaces, like what I know of conservation. So like the rangers in the Peak District, they do things like maintaining the paths, and I would say like that's part of conservation. When we was in school, we did this thing where we went and like rebuilt dry stone walls on a weekend there, and that was like a conservation weekend in the rain.
That sounds fun though. I feel like rain adds a different element to things as well. Like it's not I know we love the sun, but rain also brings like a different vibe. Like you're all wet, go through the mud. Like it's a different type of vibe.
I think go on. I was going to say, I think it's character building, isn't it? So like, I think when you've got to do, like, I love walking in the rain. Like, it's like my favorite thing to do, walking in the rain, because I think once you've got decent waterproofs on, you can literally prosper. But I just think it does add like a different dynamic if you've got to do something that's kind of like maybe like endurance in the rain. It brings out like that grit in you.
Yeah, but it's nice as well. And like you said, it's character building. I find that as well. It was definitely a bit of a challenge because you don't naturally like go out in the rain to walk. Naturally, you kind of like want to get out of the rain and protect yourself, but actually doing that, going out your way and kind of doing that is it's a good kind of thing to be doing. So sorry, just looking at my notes quickly. Oh yeah. So I'm sure like many people would want to be like involved with helping your organization and stuff and like to volunteer and stuff. How can like people get involved in that? Like you said already that you're doing some training as well with some of your leaders already that you have, but is there opportunity for people to like volunteer and get involved in other ways?
Yeah, so they were always looking for people to kind of get involved with Black Girls Hike. Like, I think the thing is with the group is like, it's not grown as much as it could have done because I've just been like a bit precious over it because it was like my baby. So I think that I've not necessarily got as much help in as I've needed. So that's what we're trying to do now. So we've just got some like non-executive directors and we're hoping that we can like really push it and just be a bit bigger. But we are always looking for people to come and offer their skills. And we do get a lot of people like, because I feel like it's like a community platform. So like literally people will message and be like, oh, I think that you could be doing this and I'd like to offer my skills and help you do this. So we get a lot of that. But yeah, you can just contact us, like drop us an email if you feel like you've got any skills that you would like to contribute, or if you would like to volunteer and lead hikes for us. But please be Black. I'm not replying to emails from people that are not Black anymore. Tired of them.
So people that are not Black have been getting in contact like
oh, it's the allies. So it's the allies are just not real allies. So all that in solidarity, they're basically just trying to take up places that are like reserved to Black women in solidarity. So yeah, we do get a lot of like white saviors being like, I would love to help because I want to use my platform and my position to do good. That's really annoying. And then you get a lot of people who are like, mainly other people of color that try and come and have to just be like, no. But now I've stopped replying because it does say everywhere that I've actually added extra stuff to say we're not BAME, we're not POC, we're not an ally organization. Like, please don't contact us about any other demographic. That's what it says on our Eventbrite. Oh, 1 second, let me just close my window. The window cleans.
That's all right.
Yeah, so that's the main thing, that people that are not Black that contact us, and then the trolls, but we're kind of moving on from them at the moment. I'm learning to kind of deal with them a bit better. At first I used to just get so mad I just want to switch on them, but obviously it's like a kind of professional organization, so I can't. Yeah. And I feel like that's the most annoying thing because they're just antagonizing it.
Because I have seen that you said trying to reclaim back nature for Black girls, and I loved it when I saw that kind of that phrase there, and I was like, right, this is really deep.
Yeah, because I think as well that a lot of the time we use language in ways that it's quite disempowering. So when we say things like diversifying, I feel like that just kind of has us on the back foot, and it always puts us kind of like in like the victim kind of, like, not like victimhood, but then if you think about it, it's we're reclaiming the outdoors because it was ours first. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. No, I feel that on a different level.
Yeah,
Because
so I think that the language that we use is really, really important, and that's why I'm tired of like things like inclusion. Like I prefer to use words like what's that new phrase that people are using? The global majority.
global majority.
Yeah. So like rather than using words like minority, we're
Yeah.
the global majority. Like Black people are the
Mm,
majority of the world. So why are we using things like minority, which means acts like we have less power?
it's true though. It's true.
Hmm.
That's deep. That's deep because honestly, even when I think about like back home and stuff and nature, it's not separate. It's one. Like
It's one.
nature, yeah, nature is one. Like we don't like me even saying city girl in nature. I kind of am separating the two. But if I
Hmm.
was like back home, I wouldn't be saying that. It's because we're one with nature. Like even how animals
Exactly.
are walking on the road, like just a different vibe there. Like we are one with nature. It's not separate.
Yeah.
So I
It's
think
true.
it's interesting as well because like for instance me growing up in London and stuff and not actually going outdoors in the same way of like camping. I didn't really experience that type of stuff. I grew up near a local estate as well, so there wasn't like much around in that sense, like you even said, and that accessibility wasn't there. So I was the only way I was outdoor was playing football. My way
Hmm.
of being outdoors was literally playing football, engaging in sports. And I was
Hmm.
back then I was a proper tomboy as well. You wouldn't have seen braids, you would have seen cane rolls,
Hmm.
single plaits. You would have seen that that was me back then. Me being that black girl as well, around so many just black boys. It was the different space in which I'm now at, and I've learned a lot through even traveling. I'm not sure if you know, I went to the Peruvian Amazon in
Yeah.
2000.
I've been watching bits of it.
Yeah, so I literally when I went there, that was 2018. That was my first like real connection deeper with nature and understanding that
Hmm.
this is deep. Like this is a sense of healing as well because that experience, I didn't understand what it was at first. I was like, I was in the jungle for 3 weeks, no phone, with like white middle class kids. And I was like thinking, what was it? Because when I was there, I didn't get it because I was just getting on with it. I was taking it all in and enjoying the moment kind of thing. But when I came back, I realized it was just simply the connection with nature. And that
Hmm.
sparked a new thing in me. And I came back with a drive as well. Like my people gotta know about this. They
Yeah,
gotta
I
be
love
there.
that.
It's not just football, it's not just music. Like we need to be going outdoors, we need to be learning about the stuff around us because when we're in as I've said, when we're in our own country, we're doing that naturally. So like why are we not
Exactly.
doing it here? Like
Exactly. So recently in an interview, I did say something like, because obviously, if you think about it, we are from nature. Like, we are nature. We're from nature. And before we lived in like these really urbanized environments, we were a lot more like connected to the land. We knew the ways of the land. People could walk outside and not have a watch and know what time of day it was, didn't they? But now, because the way our connection to nature has been severed by racism, institutional racism, all the systems that we have today that create this inequality, they've severed that connection to nature that we had. So it's
mm,
about kind of like encouraging people to kind of like get that connection back. And then also, it's one of the things that I'm really conscious of, the fact is that we're actually in an environmental crisis at the moment. It's a climate crisis, and Black and brown communities are disproportionately impacted by that. But because you don't have that connection and you don't have that kind of like sense of environmental stewardship, people are not really seeing it as it's their problem. So that's one of the things that I would quite like us to focus on as we move forward, about like the connection and the environmental connection, to being with nature and
mm,
caring about nature and the conservation side of it.
that's deep. I'm so happy to have been able to speak to you today. Um, I hope you've enjoyed the conversation. So we've kind of
Yeah.
gone through like the core thing. I just wanted to round it off with the final thing, which is if people wanted to stay in their own community group, what type of skills and tips can you share that will need for it to be successful? So like with Black Girls Hack, it's just Black girls and they're going out and we've got that sense of safe haven, if you want to say.
Mm-hmm.
How can like other community groups kind of be able to start their thing up, and what kind of tips would you give to make it as successful as your amazing initiative you have?
I'd say they could probably do it a lot different from how we did it, because I kind of felt like the group grew and then it like grew into an organization, and I was kind of still running it as a meetup, if you know what I mean. So I feel like it's having the right foundations in place and like getting the right people involved from the start so that you can be, you know, stronger, start getting the funding, start, you know, getting those bids in. And I think that you kind of have to keep you reminding yourself of what your values are and like being unapologetic about it, because we get so many people who are like, oh, could it not be people of color, and could it not be this, and why does it have to be black? And it's just like being able to say, because I'm black, my community is black, and this is what I care about, do you know what I mean? And just being able to just be unapologetic like that. I don't know, actually. Sometimes I just feel like people ask me questions like I'm an expert. I'm not an expert.
It doesn't need to be an expert answer either. It's just literally whatever comes to your mind, whatever you feel like can help. That's even good as well, what you said.
So like the local volunteer organization, they're really good in terms of like helping you with the structure of what you want your organization to be like. So I've had loads of support from them, and then like the governing bodies in like whatever you're going to be doing. So because we're into climbing, well, hiking, we working with like the British Mountaineering Council, who are like the governing body, and they've been kind of like giving us kind of like governance support and stuff. So I feel like it's kind of reaching out to people that are already in that domain as well and seeing how they can support you. I think the thing is that we're doing with Black Girls Hike is, you know how people are always like, oh, let's get a seat at the table, let's get a seat at the table. I feel like we're creating our own table at the moment, because we don't need them, they need us, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm realizing this more and more and more, is that all these organizations, especially the outdoor ones that come to us and are like, how are you doing it? They're basically struggling to do everything that Black Girls Hike is doing. We're like encouraging, we're increasing participation, we're increasing training, we're increasing representation, we're helping people get better access, and that's all the stuff that they've been struggling to do. They're getting paid to actually do it.
That's deep as well. Like I feel like that's your work is just so amazing. Even how I when I started following you before I kind of had my thing set up as well, I saw like how big like the movement was in a sense, and I was like, because what I know of is that like in America, the outdoors is much more vast in the sense of generally the amount of people who have been doing outdoorsy stuff in America has been, especially Black people as well, has been for time. Whereas here we're a bit slower in that sense. But seeing you guys as one of the biggest ones, I'd say, if not the biggest, I was like, rah, like, yeah. Like, and then obviously Sherelle as well. And then I met some other people along the journey as well. Like even British Explorer Society, obviously that's a different kind of approach, because they've been around for like 100 years nearly or something. But their thing is like way different. It was never like set up for Black people kind of thing, or with that sense of.
I had a Zoom with their CEO because they wanted to ask us like, how are you doing it? How can we do what you're doing? And I thought that was quite interesting, because one of the things that I find quite frustrating sometimes when these organizations reach out to us is, you know, a Black person would never get away with doing such a shit job in the positions that they're in. Do you know what I mean? And I just find it really frustrating that these people like running these organizations for like 20 years, they're not doing their actual job. There's just no accountability. They just think they can just reach out and get someone to give them the answers of how to do their job. And I find that really, really frustrating, to be honest. And I said that to someone recently, basically like, you can't do your job, like hand over the baton. Do you know what I mean?
I feel that we're definitely going to be the change we want to see in this world. And
definitely.
Thank you so much for today, and all the best with Black Girls Hike. I'll be watching and following. I'll be there supporting as well. Hopefully I can engage with something that happens down in London, or even travel up to activity or whatever you guys might be hosting.